This podcast is for general informational, educational purposes only and is not to be considered medical advice for any particular patient. Clinicians must rely on their own informed clinical judgments when making recommendations for their patients.
Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of PHM from Pittsburgh. I am still your host, Dr. Tony Tarchichi. In case you're new to the program, we have been coming at you since October of 2016, when we started with these continuing medical education podcasts on hospital medicine. We have been at UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, and we are still at UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh in the Paul C. Gaffney Division of Pediatric Hospital Medicine. I am a MedPeds trained pediatric hospitalist, and today's episode is a very special episode. If you're wondering, we are not offering free CME credit for today's episode, and I'm going to explain why. Every year at UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, the residents in November the pediatric residents do what's called No Shave November, where it's a fundraiser for a great cause. They're raising money for the Free Care Fund at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. And the way they do it, they have a contest where you can grow or knit your own beard all month long. Then at the end of the month, they have a noon conference where it's like a party, and they show the best beards, knit or grown, so anyone can do it, from that month. And then there's an awardee one who wins the best beard for the month. And that's actually a lot of fun, and the residents do a great job doing it. And they picked the Free Care Fund to raise money for. And they do bake sales. And this year they asked to do something a little different. They wanted the attending physicians to donate something that they could raffle off. And they asked us all to think of something. So I said, what about being on the podcast? And they thought that was a great idea. So they raffled off being on the podcast for an episode. And it was a pretty hot commodity. People seem to want it. And we have a winner. So this is a special fundraising episode that we are going to start doing every year. We're going to offer this prize to our residents every year. Just so you know, the residents raised approximately $5,000 for the Free Care Fund at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, which is great. I mean, that, as you all know, but in case you don't, helps families who don't have health insurance from getting stuck with a gigantic bill which they can't afford. So the Free Care Fund goes a long way. And the $5,000 may not seem like a lot, but I think every little bit helps. And in case you are so inclined or so moved, we don't ask for any money for the podcast, and we don't take any advertising. This is purely a labor of love, but we're not against fundraising. So if you want to donate to the Free Care Fund at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, I am going to put a link at the bottom of the description of the podcast that you can click on and go right and donate. And if you do, I know they would appreciate it. So without further ado, I'd like to announce this year's winner that we're going to have on the podcast, Dr. Andrew Georgeson. Dr. Andrew Georgeson, who's currently a third-year pediatrics resident at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. And I want you all to know that Dr. Georgeson sent me the description I'm about to read. This was, I always ask all of my guests send me whatever they want me to read to describe them or introduce them. Andrew grew up in New Jersey and did not start shaving until junior year of high school, which he believes is secondary to a self-diagnosed constitutional growth delay. While he had a late start to puberty, he quickly became hirsute, which he attributes to his father's Greek heritage. He went to medical school at Penn State Hershey, where he first started sporting a beard thanks to the encouragement of his now wife and fellow pediatric resident, Dr. Caitlin McNamara. The couple have never won the No Shave November contest, but believe they gave their audience quite a shock with their leg-shaving No Shave November submission during second year of residency. After graduation, Dr. Georgeson hopes to be a primary care pediatrician and give helpful anticipatory guidance to adolescent men in regards to their grooming practices. So, Dr. Georgeson, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tony. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
I do love that.
I've always wanted to say that. I've been a big sports radio fan growing up, so I always wanted to say that. So thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You're only the second person ever to do that, which is great. I do find it funny. Now, what's interesting, Andrew, is that you're doing research that is actually very, very applicable to hospital medicine, right?
Yeah.
Would you mind telling us about it a little bit?
Sure. So I got started with this project, and it's basically about interdisciplinary care in a hospital environment. And I got started with it intern year when I just saw a lot of our residents seem to be struggling with resident-nurse communication. And it felt like a lot of the communication barriers or breakdowns seemed to just stem from we didn't really know what the nurses did, what they saw, and they didn't seem to know kind of what we did. There were a lot of new nurse hires at that time as well, so didn't really quite understand the resident role either. And I just wanted to start a shadowing program to kind of help have residents walk a mile in the nurses' shoes, and hopefully at some point our goal is to have nurses shadow the residents too. But that was the goal, and luckily our administration thought this was a very good idea and didn't have a lot of barriers as far as starting it, and it's been pretty successful over the last 3 years.
How so?
So we had started 2 years ago now, and we had started with our new intern class. So every year, the new interns that come to Children's, they have like a 2-week intern orientation, and in that orientation now they've been doing a half morning now where they shadow a nurse, which we think is a great way of, right before they're about to start on the floor, that they get to not only meet their fellow residents, but they get to at least, learn a nurse's name and learn kind of what their job is like and learn some of the issues that some of the nurses find in our own residents, and they can kind of prepare for it before they even start on their first day. And as far as kind of the research side of things, we've been able to show a lot of benefit as far as it seems that our residents or our interns have kind of learned more respect for nurses, learned more about what they do, what their workflow is like, seem to kind of value them and what they do and what they bring, more so, based on kind of this project. And we had started to expand it as well, and we've started to use second-year residents now too, basically because we think that second-year residents can ask different kinds of questions to the nurses when they're shadowing now, as opposed to the new interns. So we think it's helpful at the beginning of their year and then kind of halfway through their residency as they're kind of mastering potentially more interdisciplinary care concepts.
I have to tell you, when I first heard about this project, I thought it was brilliant in its simplicity. Because one of the things, to be a good hospitalist, I think, you have to have a good relationship with your nursing staff. You have to know them, ideally personally, and function with them really well. And for a resident coming in a new program, I remember a long time ago in my residency, it was hard because the nurses early in July know you don't really know anything and usually call the senior. You have to earn their respect. But this is a nice way that the residents will know what the nurses do, the nurses know what the residents do. They can meet each other and get to know each other a little bit, which always helps the working relationship. Now, if somebody wants to read more about your project, have you guys submitted it for anywhere or publication or abstract presentation?
Yes, we have. So we actually were at the PHM conference from last year, 2019 conference.
In Seattle.
Yes, in Seattle. And so it's under my last name, Georgeson.
Okay, so people can look it up there. That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as part of winning this contest, you, if I'm mistaken, please correct me, have asked to almost flip the script on me and ask me questions. Is that correct?
It is. I'm very excited for this.
All right. Did you want to do our corny joke segment first?
Sure. Yeah. I figured, I don't know if you had a few prepared as well. We can kind of go back and forth if you'd like.
I have one. I do have one. I always have them prepared.
Okay. I thought I would start since
you are the guest.
Kind of like a hospital joke here. But as in our observation unit, we take care of a lot of kind of swallowed coins that kids may swallow. So this one I saw as maybe as an intern, if you're pre-rounding the next day on a child who swallowed a coin, the intern comes over and asks the nurse, how's the kid doing who swallowed a quarter last night? And the nurse says, no change yet.
Oh, I do like that one. So in my office, Andrew, I have, for the holidays, I have a number of candy canes. And these are very rare and special candy canes, very, very valuable.
What makes them so valuable?
Well, they're in mint condition.
I love the timely joke there. with the holidays. Yeah.
You're up.
Okay. Well, so I thought I would kind of ask you a few questions about your own podcast, and I know that you've been kind of researching podcasts in medical education. So I kind of just want to start off with how you think podcasts can kind of be expanded or utilized more in medical education or with continuing medical education.
That's a great question. So some of the research I've been doing having this podcast is figuring out how we can use it. From what I see, podcasting, let me back up. So society in general has become more on demand, as you would say. So like Netflix, Hulu, everybody wants their entertainment at their fingertips when they decide they want to do it. People binge watch, which really wasn't always the case. It's a very, very new thing. But I think it's spilled into medical and continuing medical education as well. Attendings like me, I have 3 kids. I have parents. My wife has parents. There's family responsibilities we have. So we're busy. I remember when I was training, I had an attending who used to tell me that they would come home every day. They would sit by the fire on their easy chair recliner, and there'd be a stack of journals by their chair, and he would just read. And he had a little notepad, he'd write notes down. And I thought that was wonderful, but absolutely unattainable for me. I mean, just unattainable. So everything's just so busy. My wife is a physician who's now a stay-at-home mom. Even that, it's just unbelievably busy. So I wanted to come up with a way that people could learn on the go. And this was self-preservation. I wanted to learn on the go. But I think that's where continuing medical education is going. I think as physicians stay busy, they'll still want to read every so often, of course. They'll still want to go to conferences, of course. But I think if they were able to have a source, a reliable source of continuing medical education that they trusted, that they could listen to in the car, going from place to place, when they're at the gym, when they don't want to watch TV and they're doing like I listen to podcasts when I do dishes, when I have to clean the kitchen. I'll have something on because I don't have a TV in the kitchen. I don't want one. And it's just nice, something in the background. Sometimes it'll be an audiobook. So I think that's the direction continuing medical education is going. We're seeing more and more of these podcasts pop up. More and more companies create them as well. I mean, there have always been audio kind of CD companies. You pay a certain amount of money, and then you would get a CD of lectures to your house, and then you could fill out the CME card and go. But I think that's the direction we're going to see more and more people wanting. And journals have responded. I mean, if you go to one of the really good ones, JAMA Pediatrics has an editor's podcast that they talk about their articles every month. And it's great. I love listening to it because they go into their major article in depth. New England Journal of Medicine usually will do one episode per month where they read. It's usually a review article. They'll just read it verbatim as a podcast, which may sound boring, but again, I like it. I listen to it. So, and I don't think it's for everyone. I think there are still going to be people who want to read and not listen. But I think a lot of people will want this type of methodology in terms of CME, especially. Does that answer your question?
Great. Yeah, no, I think that's a great way of kind of meeting physicians where they are as far as being so busy and kind of filling in those gaps. So,
but I'll tell you, the hard part is measuring how effective this is. The hard part in terms of researching is how can you prove your podcast is effective in teaching people? That becomes very, very challenging. And I haven't figured out a way to do that yet.
Yeah, I'm sure that is very, very challenging. Well, as moving on from the academic side of podcasts, I've also just been curious, if you were not in medicine, what would you do a podcast about?
If I were not in medicine, what would I do a podcast about? Oh goodness, that's a great question. I don't know yet. I'm a big sports
Or if
fan.
you could have maybe like just a non-medical guest on the show, who would you want to have?
Oh wow, a non-medical guest. Well, I'd want to go for like a heavy hitter, someone that there's so many people I'd love to talk to. Jerry Seinfeld comes to mind right away. I don't know that he would like being on the podcast, but I'd love to talk to him. I'd love to talk to Dave Chappelle. Ray Romano. I would love to talk to Arnold Schwarzenegger, actually. I think would be a great guest on the show. A former governor, a movie star, maybe a former president. Maybe Barack Obama would be a great guest. George W. Bush, Bill Clinton. Just interesting people that, I have read about and know about And I would love to talk to any of those people and probably countless others. I mean, just pick someone that I'm sure I'd be interested in talking to them. Someone his book I just read, Ron Chernow. I think I would love to talk to him about history. And Dave, he wrote 1776. This is going to kill me.
McCullough.
Dave McCullough, that's right. I would love to talk to McCullough and just pick his brain about history. I think that would be a great episode. I mean, it'd be a great time for me. I don't know if people would like it, but I would sure enjoy it.
Yeah, I would love to listen to all these podcasts, Tony. Now, I'm also curious too, with the holiday season coming up. Do you and your family have any holiday traditions that you guys like to share?
Well, let me think. So usually, my parents and my in-laws, we like to take the kids to see their grandparents. So usually we'll do 3 days at my parents and 3 days at my wife's parents. I've worked the last few holidays, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day at the hospital. So what my kids love is when I'm working on Christmas Eve, for Christmas Eve dinner, they'll get Chinese food. And they love it. They absolutely love it. They look forward to it every year. In fact, this year, I think my wife bought special plates for it. And they have, not real chopsticks. My kids are little, like the chopsticks where you learn on. And so they really do love that. So I would say that. And then my wife lived in, the UK for a few years growing up. And so she does the traditional holiday poppers in the morning that they do over in Britain, for Christmas morning breakfast, where you get like I believe it's 2 jokes and a fact and then a little prize in it, and it pops, and my kids love that. We do it over my in-laws as well. So I would say those.
Now, does she say Happy Christmas or Merry Christmas?
She says Merry Christmas. She's only there for a couple of years, but she says Merry Christmas.
And what do your kids think of your beard?
Oh, so for those of you who don't know me or haven't seen me, I do have a beard, and I tried to grow it long and big and bushy. And my daughter, who's 5, hated it. Absolutely hated it. Every day she asked me to shave it, and she actually told me it doesn't look good, Daddy. And I would ask her, do you like it? No. My other my boys, I have 2 older boys, and they want me to grow it as long as Santa Claus. And that's what they want. So the children are at odds over the beard. They're very much at odds.
Competing interests. Okay.
Yes, very much.
Any beard grooming tips you'd like to share with the listeners?
So I didn't enter this year's no shave. I mean, I actually don't think I shaved much in November to go along with it. And what I didn't know, and I don't know if people are going to enjoy this podcast episode or not, but that you actually do have to groom your beard. So you need to put in like beard oil, and there's special brushes for this. So I didn't have any of that. I don't have any of that. And so my sister-in-law, her significant other, told me, he said, "What are you doing with your beard? You need to have beard oil." He has a nice beard, and he was telling me how to groom with it. And I still haven't bought any of the accoutrements, so I just have trimmed my beard shorter, so it doesn't really show. So that's all it is.
Well, actually,
what's that?
One of our residents, as part of their the No Shave November contest, made his own beard oil and sold it to fellow beard growers.
I saw that. I almost bought that.
To raise money, yeah.
For those of you listening, the residents also baked a lot of cookies and stuff and did a bake sale, of which I was happy to contribute to. They were very good.
Yeah, they did a wonderful job. Now, another question I wanted to ask is, I feel like as a senior resident, I've been asked multiple times by medical students or interns how to spell your name, Tarchichi. And I was wondering, what do you think is the funniest way you've seen people either try to say your name or try to spell your name?
Well, I get a lot of Tartucci. I think that people go that route. And a lot of people, once to get rid of the T-A-R, they say Chi-Chi's. They say, like the restaurant Chi-Chi's. And I say, yes. And so a lot of people will then call me Dr. Chi-Chi, especially kids. Little kids love that. Oh, it's Dr. Chi-Chi. So I'll just introduce myself as Dr. Tony, because I just don't want to hear Dr. Chi-Chi. But so that's the funniest, when the kids yell, when the kids try to say it and butcher it, it's funny. But I just tell them they can call me Dr. Tony.
Nice. Another question I had is, so I'm a New Jersey native, but live in Pennsylvania. I know you've spent time in New Jersey as well as live in Pennsylvania now. I feel like Pennsylvanians always knock on people from New Jersey and what our state has to offer. But I was wondering, what did you think is the most positive experience, and what do you like most about New Jersey?
I am a New Jersey native. I went to what is now Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School for med school, and then I stayed there for my med peds residency and my chief year in med peds and chief year in pediatrics. My favorite thing about, right now my favorite thing is my parents live there, so I like visiting. I like visiting them a lot. So that's great. And then other than that, I have a ton of friends still out there from residency, so I really enjoy when we go out there, we get to see them. And then the Jersey Shore. Every year we go on vacation, usually LBI, and I do love that. That's just a very relaxing time. My kids absolutely love it. So I would say that. In Jersey, from where my parents live, it's an hour to the shore, so we can just shoot down, have a nice day, and come back up. So that's not something you can do everywhere.
Well, that's great, and I love always talking with fellow Garden State residents or natives.
That's good. Are you guys going to head back to New Jersey when you're done?
Well, we'll see. Obviously, the big news from fellowship match was yesterday, and Kate McNamara, she matched in Pittsburgh, so we'll probably be in Pittsburgh at least for the next 3 years, but we'll see.
Oh, well, congratulations
to the shore.
Congratulations
Thank
to
you.
Kate for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then my final question I had for you is any New Year's resolutions for the podcast or just upcoming episodes you're excited that you want to tell the listeners about?
Well, I did an episode on vaping, which I think I'm going to release right before I release this episode, hopefully this week. We're very busy at Children's. We have a series I'm trying to put together on our complex patients, those patients with multiple issues, G-tubes, trachs, a neurodevastation from genetic causes or hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. And what we're trying to put together is episodes on each particular aspect, trach and pulmonary care, GI, G-tube care, overall placement, things like that we as hospitals deal with all the time. And I'd like it to be a multidisciplinary episode. So we're getting our complex care clinic involved. They're spearheading this. And then let's say for the pulmonary episode, we're getting our pulmonologist who primarily deals with our complex care patients to participate. And we're going to look at it from all different angles. And so I'm hoping that works out as well as I'd like it to. And of course, we're going to finish our episode on arrhythmias with cardiology with Dr. Gaurav Arora. And hopefully we'll get into even more, maybe more newborn care, the Eat, Sleep, and Console model, which we haven't done yet, which I'd like to do. Maybe into some adult learning theory, which is also on our content specification. So there's a bunch I want to do. With the time is always the issue, but hopefully we'll get there.
Well, excellent. That's very exciting. And as I've said before, I'm a huge fan of the podcast, and as I've been here for the last 3 years, it's definitely helped me through all of my rotations on hospital medicine. So it's been a huge help. So, but I was very happy to be on the show, and thank you so much for having me.
Andrew, thank you for joining. This was my pleasure. I appreciate the kind words. I hope the podcast is helpful for everyone. I'm glad you like it, and I'm glad you won, and I hope the people listening have enjoyed this little lighthearted episode of the podcast. We're going to do it every year before the holidays with the residents at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh as part of a fundraiser for our free care fund. And whoever wins will be on the podcast, and we'll talk about something. And thank you for sharing your research. It sounds great. And happy holidays to you and your family.
Great. Thank you. Same with you.
Thank you. Time for our acknowledgments. I want to thank our special guest again. I really do appreciate your time. I want to, as always, thank the UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, and specifically the Paul C. Gaffney Division of Pediatric Hospital Medicine for continuing to support the podcast. I want to, as always, thank and acknowledge Dr. Megan Keene-Tarchichi, who helps me with everything. But I really want to thank you all who are listening. Thank you for letting me come into your earbuds or your car, wherever it is you are. I really appreciate the fact that you do that. If there's anything you want to hear or think we can cover better, any comments, suggestions, compliments, whatever you want to do, again, as always, please feel free to email me at Tony, Tony.Tarchichi, Tarchichi, @chp.edu. Thank you again, everybody. I hope you have a great day. We'll see you next time.